Hey, Lakers family, tell me you felt that tension shift around El Segundo. Something's humming behind the scenes, and it's not a player rumor. It's bigger. It's one of those, if it happens, the entire season pivots in a single headline kind of things. Quiet calls. Carefully worded texts. A window that doesn't stay open long. If you blink, you miss it, and then you wake up in a different reality for the franchise. Here's what we're going to do together right now. We're going to unpack why timing matters more than noise, how contract language and buyouts create a narrow lane for bold moves, what organizational fit really means when your best players are chasing legacy, and where the historical precedents point when teams want a new voice without blowing up the roster. I'm going to walk you through the cap side, the political side, the basketball side, how this would change how we practice, how we defend, and how we close games. No names yet. You'll see why before we dive. You're watching Lakers News Fan Report. If you live for Smart Hoops talk with real urgency, make sure you're subscribed and drop a like so more Lakers fans find this. Let's do the work, not the drama. Let's talk present tense. The Lakers built this season around urgency without panic. Keep the core competitive, add role clarity around your stars, and run a program that actually scales in April. That only works if two things hold. Your players trust the voice on the sideline, and the voice on the sideline can speed up growth while the schedule throws haymakers. That's the whole ballgame belief and acceleration. When either wobbles, the building starts asking hard questions. Those questions aren't tabloid fluff. They're strategic. What do you do when your identity is almost there, but not sticky in fourth quarters? What do you do if your practice standards are good, not great? What if the development curve is solid in theory, but too slow for the calendar you're living on? That's when franchises look up at the board and ask whether a different program, the daily grind, the teaching cadence, the defensive absolutes, can wring more out of the same roster. There's also a practical layer that's not sexy, but it's real. Coach contracts live outside the salary cap. That means if you believe the sideline is a final mile problem, you don't need to gut the locker room to address it. You need alignment, money, permission, and, yes, in some cases, draft compensation to pry loose a coach under contract. It's rare. It's awkward. But it exists. The reason teams even consider it is simple. It lets you change how you play without changing who you are. All this funnels into the real question that matters in Los Angeles. Can your staff create a defensive floor that travels and an offensive structure that survives playoff scouting? Talk all you want about shooting and star power, but if you can't defend without fouling and generate clean looks without begging for whistles, you're on a treadmill. The right program makes your role guys predictable in the best way, your stars efficient in the hardest minutes, and your film sessions bite dot. So, what kind of voice turns that key? You're looking for someone who demands precision, who coaches conditioning like it's a tactic, who turns practices into pressure cookers so games feel familiar, and who has a track record of building layered defenses that break opponents' rhythm. You don't need clever. You need inevitable. You need a tone that isn't performative. It's lived in, and it has to be big enough to hold Los Angeles. Now. This isn't a referendum on anyone after a bad week or a hot one. It's a macro conversation ownership windows, star timelines, and the reality that in this city, the standard is banners. A franchise with this history keeps a list. Not because they're disloyal, but because they're prepared. You monitor fit. You monitor growth. You monitor if the voice in the huddle is getting sharper or fading under the weight of expectation. And if a very specific door opens, you at least game it out. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a sideline that's relentlessly process-driven. That has one with discipline and physicality and a teaching style that leaves zero space for bad habits. Imagine a staff with an industrial-strength defensive vocabulary switching rules that don't crumble under stress. Close-out technique that holds up under fire. Help rotations that arrive on time without overhelping. Imagine practices where your 10th man comes off the floor wired like a starter. That's the kind of culture shift that changes a playoff series before it starts, if a front office were ever going to test that kind of seismic move midstream, or in the first viable window. They need 3 signals to line up. The roster believes it's a contender. The market for assistants can't deliver the same ceiling. And the target coach's situation elsewhere is at least theoretically flexible with compensation and permission. All 3. No exceptions. That's how you avoid theater and pursue substance. Okay, paragraph 10. Here's the thing you came for. The idea on the whiteboard right now quietly, carefully, is whether the Lakers should explore a path to Dan Hurley if that pathway exists. Effectively swapping out J.J. Redick for the college game's most demanding program builder. Not tomorrow morning, not with a press release ready, but as a real scenario, the organization could evaluate if performance, alignment, and timing point the same direction. That's the headline living under the floorboards of this conversation. Let's deconstruct it. First, feasibility. Hurley is under contract and fiercely committed to his program. That's not news. But under contract and coaching isn't a brick wall. It's a negotiation framework. If an NBA team wants a college coach under deal, there are only 2 ways in: permission plus buyout or nothing. If it's an NBA to NBA move, it can involve draft compensation. The point is, it's never unilateral and it's never free. The Lakers, if they wanted to go there, would need organizational unanimity and a willingness to attach real assets that do not touch the rotation. Second, fit. Hurley's calling card is standards louder than slogans. His teams play violent, connected defense. Offensively, he leans into organized chaos screening with purpose, pace with detail, sets that manufacture layups and threes by design, not accident. That translates in the NBA only if your stars buy in and your role players find roles they can master. The Lakers roster, with its blend of veteran IQ and hungry role guys, is the kind of room that can make that philosophy sing if the room hands the new voice the keys. Third, transition costs. Any midseason coach change carries turbulence. Terminology flips, practice plans change, rotations get re-auditioned. The upside case is you get more structure, more accountability, and the defense hardens. The risk case is you burn games climbing the learning curve, and the locker room turns quiet instead of convicted. Los Angeles can't afford a dead month. If they ever make a move like this, it would be an inflection point where the near-term pain is worth the postseason payoff, or, more likely, in the first off-season window where a proper camp and staff build-out make the leap. Fourth, J.J. Redick. Respect where it's due. He was hired to modernize the offense, empower stars with clarity, and bring a player's pragmatism to lineup management. There are real positives in that profile: communication, shot profile logic, honesty with veterans. If the team is responding and the needle is moving, front offices ride with the process. But if the process stalls, you don't change your roster DNA out of panic. You ask whether a different teacher gets you to the same ceiling faster. That's the only lens that matters. Let's get granular on basketball. A Hurley program with these Lakers likely means stricter shell principles, more contested twos and fewer free corner threes allowed, rebounding as a non-negotiable with guards, and an offensive menu that layers actions so that your third option is still a high-efficiency read. That helps your stars arrive fresher in the fourth and gives your role players a job they can win on repeat. It also means louder practices, more film heat, and fewer will-live-with-it possessions. What would compensation even look like if this were an NBA to NBA scenario down the road? Historically, it's draft capital, sometimes cash, sometimes both. The point isn't to drain the future. It's the price to voice appropriately without touching your top 8. If it were college to NBA, you're talking buyout language, permission, and relationships. Either way, you're not sneaking around, you're operating above board because anything else gets you laughed out of the room. There's a leadership dimension here that gets ignored in hot take land. Los Angeles needs a head coach who can hold stars and rookies to the same standard without theater. That's not about volume. It's about credibility. Hurley's rep is built on no-compromise habits. Redick's rep is built on high IQ clarity. Both can work. The question the Lakers have to answer is which one gives them the greatest chance to be the team nobody wants to see in May, and which one does it on a timeline that matches the window. All right, let's kill a couple lazy narratives. College coaches can't coach pros. Some can. Some absolutely can. It comes down to staff construction, humility, and whether your scheme asks pros to do pro things instead of turn them into robots. Mid-season changes always ruin chemistry. Not if the room is craving sharper edges and the voice fits the city. You can't pay pits for a coach. It's not common, but preseason exists for teams paying real assets to secure a sideline leader. It's a choice, not a fabled dot. So where does this leave the Lakers today? Monitoring, demanding, measuring. You don't make a move like this to please a headline. You make it because your internal metrics defensive rating versus top 10 offenses, late game efficiency, turnover quality, practice grading tell you the ceiling is trapped behind the voice, not the talent. If those metrics trend up, you stay the course. If they stall, you start calling. That's grown-up team building. Here's the blueprint that would make sense if the stars ever aligned. Finish this evaluation block with honesty. Keep communication clean with the current staff. Identify the permission, bailout path in parallel, quietly and respectfully. Stress test the cost against your draft plan. And then only then decide if it's worth turning the key. If it is, you move with speed and class. If it isn't, you back your current coach fully and go add the best defensive assistant you can find to harden the floor. Fans, this is where I hand it to you. If the Lakers had a clear lane to Dan Hurley, would you want the front office to explore it, or do you want to stay the course with J.J. Redick through the entire season and reassess in the summer? What price picks? Bailout money would be acceptable for a coaching upgrade if you believe it elevates the defense and the practice standard immediately. Tell me you're lying. This community is sharper than the national chatter. Prove it in the comments. My take? If the on-court product level's up under J.J. Redick, you don't force a headline winning is the headline. But if the internal data says the ceiling is locked behind standard and structure, and if a respectful, compensated path to Hurley truly exists, you at least pick up the phone. That's my basketball opinion, not a report, and yes, it's speculation.